morning of Wednesday, 8th of January 2020, an airplane from Ukraine International Airline crashed tragically and all the 176 passengers died immediately. The tragedy got viral immediately, especially because there were passengers from different countries, and this fact actually made those countries to get involved in this tragedy quickly. The government of Iran immediately called the crash a technical accident of the airplane, very quickly cleaned the scene, and stopped talking about it. The spiritual leader in Iran, that's actually what they call Khamenei, did not even mention the death of 176 people. And instead of announcing it as a tragedy, they were busy celebrating their show off against America. And what was that story about showing off against America? For those who do not know about this, I shortly mentioned this. On Friday before the airplane was crashed, the US killed a terrorist of the Islamic Republic, and in return, they will keep saying that they are gonna take a huge revenge from America for this terrorist whom they were calling as their hero. Like a bully, on the morning of the same day as the airplane crashed, they sent 15 or some say 22 missiles to an empty American base in Iraq, which did not cause any kind of damage to Americans. But instead, they announced in Iran that they have killed 80 Americans. They have taken their revenge and they have succeeded against America as always. But why did they need to tell such a fake story? What did they have to lie? Because simply they have a small number of supporters whom need to be fed by stories like this, like any other countries, any other dictators all over the world, all through the history. Getting back to the crash story, so according to the government in Iran, the case was closed. And actually that was an attitude the government has had all through the last 4 decades. When and where exactly? For example, in 2009, after the Green Movement against the government, exactly 1 month after an airplane crashed, all the passengers were killed. The reason was announced technical problem of the plane, and the case was closed according to the government. Again in 2018, only 1 month after a big anti-governmental protest, after a lot of people were killed on the streets and were arrested, again an airplane was crashed. And this time the airplane crashed to a mountain, everyone died, and the same process as the one before happened until the case was closed, according to the government. In the second one, it is worth mentioning that there were a big number of environmental scientists and activists. In these 2 mentioned crashes, there were no force to help the people of Iran to try to find out the truth behind the crashes. But the case in 2020 was an absolutely different one. While the reason behind these brutal acts was to distract the Iranian people from their brutality during the movements that had already happened 1 month ago, 1 month before the airplane crashes. This one was, the one in 2020 was an international airline. 36 passengers were from other countries such as Ukraine, Afghanistan, Sweden, etc. The other 140 passengers were Iranians, who 61 of them had double citizenship with Canadian passports, and the rest were mostly living and studying in Canada, still having only Iranian citizenship. Therefore, this time the same attitude of calling the airplane's technical problem and trying to force to close the case was the most stupid decision made by the government in Iran. From the early hours after the accident, there were few international organizations that started their investigation for the cause of the crash, while Islamic Republic was even refusing to give the black box to the company of manufacturers, which was Boeing. To make a long story short, after 3 days of denial and saying any kind of lies to the people in Iran and, of course, to the world. The result of the investigations had the results of the investigations and the pressure actually of the countries involved in the tragedy, specifically Canada, forced the Islamic Republic to confess that the reason was actually a ground-to-air missile attacking the airplane. This confession made the people in Iran actually very furious, and on the same day, again, the people came on the streets of Tehran and many other cities to show their anger against the brutal regime who has kept such an important matter in silence and disrespected 140 mourning families. That was on 11th of January. But there is a lot more behind this anger. People are angry because they are actually remembering all those times, those disasters that happened, and the truth behind them were never revealed. No one took the responsibility for those disasters. No one supported the families. Who were a part of those disasters. And no one helped them to fight for their rights. Everything were forced to be kept in secret. No one were allowed to investigate them or even talk about them. And even the families were banned to mourn for their beloved ones. I just mentioned in brief some of the recent tragedies that were happened to the people in Iran. For example, I already have mentioned 2 airplane crashes. And I should also add that the second one that happened in 2018, as I mentioned before, was a bigger disaster. As I mentioned before, there were a number of environmental activists amongst the passengers, and the point that made their presence in that flight to be an important matter actually was just the story behind it was just that a few days ago, before the crash was happened, they had a gathering in front of the Islamic Republic Parliament to show their opposition against what the government is doing to nature regarding its nuclear and missile activities, which is actually a long story and a very complicated one that I'm not going to mention here. Another tragedy was in November 2019, just a few months ago, when people came to the streets in almost 200 cities all over Iran to show their objection in regard to the mismanagement of the government about every single aspect of life in Iran, especially the economy. And the world might know this movement as the protests against the oil prices, which in reality was much more than that. It was against a bunch of thieves and liars who have taken us hostage for more than 40 years. And these liars, these thieves, are stealing our wealth to spread terrorism all over the world and spreading hatred between people. During this protest in last November, almost 1,500 people were shot dead only in 2 days. Many disappeared and almost 8,000 people were arrested whom we do not have any information about. And still, the most important problem is that it has considered a domestic matter. So there were no force from outside or international organizations to follow up this disaster, to help the Iranian people. In one word, we have been literally genocide inside the closed borders of Iran. And no one knows the real story behind it. No one knows what's actually going on in Iran. But this time, we the people of Iran want to ask the world, the people of the world, the international organizations and media, to hear our voice, to know we have been taken hostage in our own country by a bunch of tyrants that now the world knows a bit about. And the world now knows how they murder and then try to erase their trace and come up with one simple solution. As I mentioned, for example, for the plane crash, is like they said the plane crashed because of the technical problem, which was, we know now, which was not the truth. Now I think you can imagine how many times they have reacted with the same attitude towards all their crimes against the people in Iran and even against the world. It is also worth mentioning that all these airplane crashes were done by government right after the anti-government movement by people, just to distract the people from what has happened during those protests, as I already mentioned. And to create an even bigger disaster for the people, to keep them busy, so that their power, their actions, they were getting lower and with less effect. People of the world, please hear our voice. Please notice that every single day there's a lot of Iranians who are dying for different reasons, such as, for example, in just one case, I should mention that 27,000 people each year under road accidents are dying just because there is a government who's ruling the country, which their goal is not to serve the people, but just to steal what they have. They don't really care. They don't care at all about the people, about the safety, about the security. That's why every day people are dying just on the road, just in one case. Please hear our voice right now. And just know that there are right now protests carrying on the streets of many cities in Iran. People are out again from 11th of this January, and there is a risk again that this brutal government starts another mass killing just after the one that has happened in November. Please spread this message to anyone you can, that we need help desperately. We need the world to know this. The more the world knows about this, the more the world knows about what's going on in Iran now, the less likely the government dares to open fire on the youth and children on the streets of Iran. I beg you as a human being to spread this word and to do your best to avoid another human disaster to happen right now. Please take action now, and I apologize because of the bad quality of my video. Bless, and thank you in advance.